Welcome to This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast, episode 5. Made it to 5 episodes. A forum where we can discuss sports, politics, social issues, religion. We're going to take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. Let's jump right in.
Act 1 Democracy.
Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, is a political genius. That's right, political genius. During a pandemic, he sets himself in opposite to another political figure who happened to be the President of the United States, when in fact, he's the same exact person. He then created a hero cult out of the sycophantic media and turned this popularity, this political momentum, this exposure into a lucrative book deal. Genius. As we've discussed in previous episodes, I don't believe in a lot of conspiracy theories. This Cuomo situation is a perfect example of why I don't believe in conspiracy theories. You can't get away with it, but for so long. The Cuomo situation is atypical of what happens to those who are trying to pull the wool over the public's eyes. The fact of the matter is they routinely get caught. The issue is not whether or not there is a conspiracy. The issue is not whether or not they get caught. The issue is whether or not we care. Depending on who we're rooting for at the time, very often people do not care. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why our system is set up the way it is. Democracy exists in the United States of America as a convoluted, disjointed, inefficient system. Your founding fathers were political geniuses. Your founding fathers were students of history. And they knew Andrew Cuomo better than you did. And they know the next 10 Andrew Cuomos better than you will. Democracy was created inefficiently by our founding fathers because they knew that it was going to be a system populated by a bunch of Andrew Cuomos, by a bunch of Donald Trumps, by a bunch of Nancy Pelosi's. These are not admirable people. These are not people that you look up to for leadership. These are politicians. The position is as much about self-indulgence and feeding one's ego than it is about public service. Your founding fathers knew that. How then? How can you keep these narcissists from destroying the very fabric of the nation once they assume power? It's quite easy. You set up power against itself. You create different branches of government. You have those branches compete for power, not only within themselves, but with the other branches. Your founding fathers created a system knowing that politicians, past, present, and future, were no-account jackasses. That they weren't trustworthy. They weren't, certainly, deserving of your admiration. And therefore, in order to check their power, trifurcated government. Brilliant. I don't believe I see politics and politicians the way you do, dear listener. Although we feigned loyalty to the United States, to its institutions, in our hearts, in our souls, from a place of primordial worship, we want the kings and queens. The people want kings and queens. Our founding fathers knew this about people. They also knew their history. So they knew the history of kings and queens. Occasionally you're going to get a Solomon. Occasionally you're going to get a King David. Someone who is wise, who is meticulous, who has the interests of the people in their hearts, in their minds. But that is the exception. If that is the exception, then what is the rule? The rule for centuries has been royalty f***ards. Royalty Tards. Selfish, lazy, entitled, ignorant. Royalty. Tards. So we weren't going to do it that way. And to the extent that the people were going to try to project royalty onto the politicians in our democracy, well, too bad. Because they were still going to have to compete for power with two other branches of government. I'm not so sure that Cuomo doesn't fully understand all of this. And that's why I think he's brilliant. The COVID pandemic strikes, and it vested in him strong executive power. The balance of power shifted amongst the branches of government. Now, granted, he is a state governor, but the system exists throughout the 50 states. The trifurcation of power, the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch. During the crisis, Cuomo was vested great power to address the pandemic. And he did a very effective job at self-promoting in that moment of opportunity. Now, the weak-willed and the weak-minded will hear this and exclaim, that's not his job. His job is to serve the people. His job is to help save lives. His job was to stem the pandemic. What are you, in 4th grade? Did you just get out of your civics class and got a little sticker on your lapel? Me learned me about government today. You don't want to be treated like a child? Stop acting like a child. And the easiest way to stop acting like a child is to stop thinking like a child. You went looking for a hero, and you found one. Whose fault is that? Maybe instead of looking for a hero, you should have been looking for a leader. As an aside, dear listener, come in close. Let me tell you a little secret. A little secret about politicians. You want all your dreams to come true? You treat politicians like prostitutes, and you treat prostitutes like politicians. That's right. We've got it backwards in this country. We look down on the prostitute, and we elevate the politician. Both of them are in sales. One of them is selling their body, the other is selling their mind and soul. You give a prostitute $1,000, you give a politician $1,000, where do you think you're going to get more value? Right? You know what I mean? Not that I know anything about that personally, of course. I read an article once in Reader's Digest. That's what it was. And I didn't really even want to read that article. I was reading that article to get to the next article. I happened upon it. Anyway, back to the question at hand. Which one, dear listener, will you buy? For most of us, the answer is simple. It's the politician. The politician is a necessary evil. Why? Because none of us wants to do that shit job. None of us wants to do that shit job. You're not going to run for public office. I'm not going to run for public office. Hell, most of us won't even get involved in the campaigns of those that are running for public office. You're right not to want to run for office, and you're right not to want to get involved in the campaigns. It's the quintessential den of thieves. You can't trust anyone. No one listening to this will disagree. And yet somehow, through mental gymnastics, a floor routine performed by a guy who weighs 500 pounds, we end up placing these people on a pedestal? And that is my ultimate point. The ultimate point about democracy, the ultimate point about how our government was set up, and the ultimate point about us as a people. Is that what we're looking for today? Is a leader? Is that what we want as a people? To be led? We don't want a leader. We want royalty. We want heroes. We want social media icons. The ugly truth isn't that's who we are now. The ugly truth is that's who people have been for hundreds, if not thousands of years. That's why you have a political system. That's why you have a system of government that is set up the way that it is. If the risk was between acting quickly and acting decisively to address any kind of problem, or in the alternative, preventing such decisive action, our founding fathers chose the latter, and time again have been proven right to have done so. The heroes that you keep promoting to run the country demonstrate that your founding fathers were correct. We don't want leaders. We want people like us. And then we want to have all the benefits that we would have derived had we actually elected leaders. Throughout the course of history, and as demonstrated in the present, we want tards, and we're getting tards. And I refuse to condemn a tard when he sees a great political and economic opportunity that he doesn't try to capitalize on it. God bless you, Andrew Cuomo. God bless you.
Act 2 podcast guest.
Special feature on this week's episode, a guest. Someone actually agreed to come onto this podcast and speak with me. Welcome Kahn, host of the Smarter Sales Show, not only the internet sensation podcast, but an internet sensation on internet television. Wow. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you would qualify yourself as a sales professional, would you not?
I would, yes.
And you would be able to comment on the emotion, the drive, the energy of someone's presentation in a public pitch, a private pitch. This is what you do for a living, correct?
Correct, yes. People come to me when they're good at what they do, but they're frustrated because it should be easier to demonstrate their credibility and expertise and close more deals.
Got it. So can you comment on then, for the 8 or 9 people who actually listen to this podcast, can you comment on the emotional strength, the animal magnetism involved with a man who is screaming at a television during a sporting event in a public place? What is it that draws so many women to such a man?
Well, speaking as a single professional woman, I mean, nothing turns me on more than a guy yelling at his television to a team that cannot hear him and will not take his advice. But I do appreciate the sense of passion that man has to make an impact on his team. A team that cannot hear him, will not listen to him, and even if he was probably yelling in their ear from the stadium seats, they probably wouldn't take his advice. But you got to admire a guy with that kind of passion.
I love your positive attitude about this. Sitting in a studio in front of a microphone. Is that how you feel about such a person when you're sitting next to them at a table in that public space?
Oh, wow. Let's see.
Don't be afraid to just
reveal
your judgment.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking, what a jackass.
That's legitimate.
Sit your butt down. They can't hear you, nor are they going to do what you think they should do with that ball in whatever game it is that they are using that ball in.
Maybe if they directed that passion more to their work, you'd be able to coach them up on the sales side?
Definitely. I mean, I will say this for that guy. You can't teach somebody, you can't coach somebody who isn't passionate about something. So if somebody's bringing a level of interest and passion about a topic or a team, then that person is probably open to learning more, growing more, and that's a coachable person. So there's that.
Hey, maybe this is just stream of consciousness thing.
Maybe.
But maybe you go in to some of these men who are struggling or at least just want to refine the skill set that they have that's already so effective and say, hey, why don't you bring the kind of energy that you have when Team A or Team B is failing and you're screaming at them on a television set? Why don't you bring that same kind of energy into the pitch to client A or client B?
Yeah, that's definitely that is definitely something I could do. I think.
Is that your polite way of saying there's no way in hell I'm going to do that, and I'm not going to tell you as much?
You know, it is your podcast, and I don't. It's not a good idea to shame the host, Patrick. It's just a.
I do it every week to myself. I don't. It's not. No one who actually listens to this is going to see it any different.
I probably don't have that insight into that guy. Like that guy, I'm not going to the bar where we're watching the game. Like if I'm his sales coach, I'm not going to the bar with him to witness in real time the passion directed at that team on the television. But I would say, just speaking from my own experience, I would probably want to direct that guy and his passion of yelling at the team, and I would think like, if you took 1/10 of that energy and took out the trash, maybe unloaded the dishwasher, we might have something here.
Oh, so it's not just whether or not they can bring it at the boardroom or they can bring it on a sales call. It's whether or not they can bring it to their domestic responsibilities as well.
Well, now I'm talking for personal experience.
Oh,
now
okay.
I'm just saying, like, out of the realm of sales coach, here's what I want you to be passionate about. Like, get shit done in all areas of your life. Like, own it. Own, that passion that as you yell at the TV, bring that same level to everything you do, including the trash and the dishes. Like wash those dishes with passion. Like, get it done.
Or get a dishwasher. Right?
It's
the 21st century.
That too, yeah. Well, there's that guy who's yelling at the team about his way of what they should have done with that ball probably has one way to load the dishwasher. I'm a simple woman. I don't care as long as it gets done. I'm good.
Okay. Are there more than one? Is there more than one way to load a dishwasher? I'm not.
Not to the man who asked that question. Clearly, there's one way.
Yes, I have a routine.
Of course you do.
The dishes come out clean. There's nobody to argue with.
You know what? I would not be that girl. I just want clean dishes, and I don't care if it's on the top rack or the bottom rack, or it's facing left or facing right. You do you, babe. But, like, dishes are clean, I'm good.
Okay. All right, well, we've got that settled. So you mentioned it, as a single woman who has to probably navigate the landscape of dating. How does one react to a man, let's say in his 40s, who is wearing a jersey in a public place? What does that do for you from a professional standpoint and a personal standpoint?
Okay, that's a good question. Not one that I have thought of often. I put a lot of brain power into that specific type of question, but let me think. So it doesn't do anything for me personally or professionally to see a man in a jersey. I'm probably thinking, still doing that 12-year-old thing, huh? But again, no, let's say it this way. Because I wouldn't throw shade on my fellow sisterhood wearing a jersey. Now that's cool. Like she's in the game, right? She's
interesting.
An interested fan. A guy, it depends, right? Okay, here's now I'm thinking about this. So a guy wearing a jersey, fine. A guy that takes off that jersey to reveal his body painted, hairy, gut with the team colors and a message for the team on his chest, no pass.
Ooh,
no
okay.
Pass. That's...
Well, then let's qualify that, because you have in your mind clearly the image of the guy who would actually do that. And it didn't sound like a very positive image of said man. What if that man was, let's say, in his late 20s, happened to be, 6'4", 5, 6, 8% body fat, ripped. Same scenario. Comes in with the jersey, takes it off, has his body painted.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You know what?
So there's layers here.
There's layers. Yes. Honestly, if you have a perfect body, you can do whatever Can I say on your show?
You can't say on the show. We'll just bleep it in post.
Yeah, if you have a great body, you can do whatever you want, basically. Yeah.
I think that's one of the unwritten rules in life.
I think so.
When you are attractive, you can get away with a lot of things that unattractive people cannot.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something. We're going to circle this back to sales.
Oh, I like it.
And, you know, that book, that really famous book that everybody's read, How to Win Friends and Influence... Oh, no, sorry, not that one. The other famous book, Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
Let's talk Think and Grow Rich for a moment.
Napoleon Hill, correct?
Yes. So in that book, I believe it's chapter 6, he talks about sex as a power thing. And he literally says that people who are highly sexual do better in business. There's just something to that dynamic. So now let's look at the guy in the stands ripping off his shirt. Maybe, you know, I don't know. I don't know his sexual preferences or abilities there, but maybe that's just a demonstration of, like, look, I'm successful. I read Napoleon Hill.
I don't think that anybody who does that was inspired by Napoleon Hill to rip off their clothes or to scream at a sports team or a sports franchise. But I see what you're saying because I've read the book and there is something, I believe he calls it like a magnetism or chemistry, something to that effect where people who have such energy seem to just be able to execute, to be able to close deals, to enjoy success, or maybe even it's not just enjoy success, but they expect success.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And honestly, you know, we, like it or not, for better or for worse, attractive people sell more. They just do. I mean, we want to do business with people they like. We like people who have a way about them that is attractive. And what attracts us is sometimes looks and sometimes personality and sometimes, you know, other things, smarts or whatever. But honestly, it makes sense. That's why we spend time to groom ourselves, to look the part, to dress the part for sales and business. You know, it's important. So same thing in dating. That's, you know, circling back to the guy in the jersey. Like, if he shows up to our first date wearing the jersey, unless we're going to a sporting event, that's not a thing that's gonna get my attention.
All right, but now circling back to what you just said, what if this man is a terribly pretty man and you look at him and you're like, wow, physically, I'm very attracted to this man. He's clearly dense because he's coming to a first date in a restaurant, in a bar, whatever your location of choice, in a sports jersey. Are you looking at like a big mound of clay that you think you can mold into something? Or are you just thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with this?
Man. It depends. I think I would give him probably more benefit of the doubt than somebody not attractive, well-dressed. But at some point, you got to give me more than this is a good-looking guy. And I have to be able to laugh or talk or be intrigued. So, yeah.
I think I would initially be intrigued as to why that person wore a sports jersey to a first date.
There you go.
So that could at least keep you interested for 30 minutes until you can wean out of that guy, you know.
Yeah, 30 minutes or 7 minutes.
So, okay. I was giving him too much credit, too much time.
A lot of interest in a jersey. I'm going to go with that's probably a good 7-minute story, maybe less. And yeah.
Well, I was just saying, how long would you actually stay at the table, right? Because you sit down, you make a little chit chat, server comes over, maybe look at a menu, maybe order yourself a cocktail. You're already 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of broach, wow, Jersey.
So that's an interesting choice.
Yes. And see what direction that goes in.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Yeah. You could definitely.
Not that I'm giving you advice. You're the sales professional. You're the one who's the communication professional. But I'm just saying, I would want to explore, how did you come about looking through a wardrobe of clothes, thinking about going out on a first date, and you said, the Chicago Blackhawks jersey, that's what I'm going to go with tonight. Not a button-down shirt, mind you.
Right.
But the Blackhawks jersey.
Yeah, and as a communications professional, thank you, I would definitely ask questions to discover a little bit more about the motivation behind that. And that's going to give me a little insight into the individual. And I probably wouldn't want to make him feel bad for making the wrong choice, but it would make me question other decisions or other things that might have just slipped right by. So
That's very courteous of you.
That's why I don't vote, Patrick.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of jackasses out there.
Well, then you've embraced the mantra of this very podcast, that's for sure.
Yes, I understand it. I understand the intention of the program, because there's, a guy showing up to a first date wearing a Blackhawks jersey is probably somebody who is canceling out my vote.
Yes. I would agree with this, but you'd still give him the opportunity to redeem himself, which, again, I find that admirable as well. What do you think would have to come out of his mouth in order for you to get the second cocktail? You sat down, you got your first cocktail, chit-chat's out of the way, you're settling into your seat, you're looking at this guy. What's got to come out of his mouth about Jersey, first date, in order for you to finish that first cocktail and not say, well, it's been fun?
I will tell you exactly what it would take.
Okay.
What it would take is his obvious interest in me. If he was able to turn that around and say, well, I could tell you, I could talk your ear off about the Blackhawks, my favorite team, and my dad gave me this jersey and he passed away last week, but I didn't want to cancel this day because you were so beautiful and I had to meet you, but I'm grieving, whatever his story is, right?
By the way, I'm taking notes because I'm going to use this story. I'm going to incorporate it. I'm not sure it's going to be because I'm wearing a jersey, but I'll screw up in some other capacity and I'll have, this is my backstory.
You will. I honestly, this is great dating advice for any human being, but men especially. Put a little interest into asking her about her story, not just rushing to tell her yours. And that's good advice in sales. That's good advice in dating. It's served me well. But the guys that keep me at the table are the ones that ask me about me. And I love when people are interested. That's human beings, right? We want other people to be interested in us. And we find people who are interested in us more interesting.
Good point.
So that's always a great strategy. And it's actually interesting. I'm thinking about it. At one point, early when I was in my married life, I actually wrote a book called, it's not anywhere. You can't even find it. It's only in my basement in a stack. But it's called Marriage Means Business. And the idea was that the same things that make us successful in business can be tools that would make us successful in relationships. And one of those strategies is being able to ask good questions in a sales conversation allows you to know a little bit more about your prospect and how you might help them. And being really interested in a person you're in a relationship with by asking questions about them lets them know you care. You are interested in them more than just, a one-night stand or something.
So you have a book that's published and you're trying to play it off. Who published this book?
Okay, well, first of all, that one was a train wreck. That one was more like I shouldn't have said a book. That one was a chapter in a book, and it was a compilation of chapters on different business and relationships things. So I'm not even going to tell you the title of that one because I don't want anybody to look for that one. But the book I am proud of is called Myth Shift, and it's challenging the truths that sabotage success. And you would like it because it's all about things that we're told and like passed off as like this is the gospel truth, and then I kind of shift your thinking on it, like that's not exactly the truth, and here's why.
Okay, so not only are you here to plug a podcast and an internet television program, you've got a book as well. So that book's published, yes?
Yeah, you can buy that on Amazon. Myth Shift.
Myth Shift.
Yeah, but actually...
By Merritt Kahn.
Well, okay, so it's Merritt Guest, because I unfortunately published that under my old married name, and then I went back to my maiden name.
Spell your married last name for, again, the 9 people that might actually listen to this, and then the 5 that might actually go look up the book.
G-E-S-T, Guest.
All right, that's easy enough. So Merritt Guest and the Myth Shift. So just uttering that last name sent a shiver down your spine.
Yes, it did. This was a man who really wasn't that interested in anything other than himself, so I should have seen so many signs earlier on.
And yet, at the time, you were publishing a book. Wow. Interesting. Okay, so from there, I want to circle back. You've circled back very nicely. I'm circling back. One of your earlier comments was about man standing in front of television yelling, they can't hear you. They're not going to do what you tell them. But man, not to say it's me, I'm just speculating about someone that might do this, might have such chemistry, such animal magnetism in them, hearkening back to Napoleon Hill,
Yes.
that they may feel like, yes, I can be successful. I can vibrate at such a frequency that the universe is going to convey to this multitude of people, stop trying to throw on 3rd and 2. Run the goddamn ball. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, that is universal truth, and any coach should damn well know that.
Okay.
Second of all, I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that this man yelling at his television actually has any concept of vibrating at such a level that the universe would deliver his message to the coach. So those two things seem very different to me.
Incongruent?
Very incongruent. So whoever this guy is, more power to him. He's lightning. He's light years ahead of most men who are yelling at the TV. So let's give him props just for that. Okay. The universal vibration. That's just not typical guy yelling at his TV. So I kind of like that, actually. There is a strength there. This brings up a very interesting dynamic because there's context in the yelling. So there's yelling. You have to look at what's the intention behind the communication. So if I say, you never take out the trash, and I say it with a tonality like, you never take out the trash, then the intention behind the message is coming through in my tonality. But if I say, you never take out the trash, then it's more like a question, like, you don't do that? I do that. Doesn't everybody do that? So it's a completely different message. It's the same words, but it's completely different message based on how you say it and what your intention is behind those words. So this guy yelling at the TV, is he coming from a place of like, I love this team so much and I just want them to vibrate at the same high frequency that I am and have this passion. I'm trying to just infuse it into my television and into the players and coaches. Like, that's adorable and attractive. But if the guy is like yelling at us, you dumbass, bleep, 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 and you don't know what you're doing, and I know everything, and you know nothing, and I should be the coach, that is a jackass.
Okay. So how I should reframe the comment would be, you don't run the ball on 3rd and 2? I see. So I'll work on, not that it was me, it's that speculative person that I was just introducing into this conversation. But I see what you're saying. So speculative person, if they could just somewhat change their tonality, they might actually accomplish their goals.
Maybe. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that they're going to get their team to do what they want by yelling at the television, but I think where you're coming from is the point. Like, I love this team so much. I want only the best things for them. And as their most loyal fan, what's good for my team is good for me. I feel good when they win and all of that. So that's a good thing. But if you yell at the TV because you know better than the coaches that are paid to be there, that's a problem.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming onto the podcast. I feel like it's been very informative. It's informed my listeners because I might have 1 or 2 listeners. Again, it's not me.
Right.
I would never deem to do so.
No.
But there may be 1 or 2 people listening to this podcast that would elect to yell at their television in the event that their team did not perform up to their high standards. So I feel like you've done a service. I don't have anything to give you this isn't like you just voted. I don't have a sticker. But you've done a service to maybe 1 or 2 men out there, and that's going to have a ripple effect. I can assure you.
Well, if those same 2 guys went on a first date with a nice button-down shirt, maybe ironed even, I think I've done them a much better service. Well, I mean, in fact, I'm pretty sure I did you a way better service.
Well put. Well put. Plug yourself again. The Kahn co-host. I don't want to give your don't want to slight the co-host that you work with, but Kahn, co-host of the Smarter Sales Show.
Yes, it's all in all your favorite podcast platforms, and if you would like to watch us, because we are fun to watch, you can watch it on the Sales Experts channel.
Wow. And before we go, published author of the
Myth Shift.
The Myth Shift.
Challenging the truths that sabotage success.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Merritt.
Thank you, Patrick.
Act 3 Sports.
Momentum is a hell of a thing in life in general, but it's a hell of a thing particularly in sports. Mediocre hockey team, 6, 7, 8 seed in the playoffs. Goalie gets hot, carries the team to the conference finals, the Stanley Cup, maybe even wins the Stanley Cup finals. The Tampa Bay Rays got hot at the right time, went to the World Series last year. Interestingly enough, I think you could say the same thing about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The defense, the last couple of regular season games and throughout the playoffs, just played lights out. Momentum carried them to the Super Bowl. In looking at my bracket for the NCAA tournament, I just couldn't pick Tennessee to beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had a couple of solid victories at the end of the season, then stormed into the Big 12 tournament, beat a number of really good teams. Their momentum carried them to the conference finals in the Big 12 tournament, where they inevitably lost to Texas. What I completely overlooked was the fact that Oregon State, the team that Tennessee would play in the first round, was that same exact team. Had a couple of Solid wins at the end of the regular season. Momentum carries them into the Pac-12 tournament where they win the whole thing. It didn't help that the Tennessee team that showed up to that game was the one that looked like they'd never bounced a round ball in their hands before. Unfortunately, that team has reared its ugly head numerous times over the course of this basketball season. So it was somewhat expected when that team made an additional, and unfortunately, its last appearance for the season. I overlooked and picked against the Big Uncle Mo, the Big Momentum. As many a delusional fan is wont to do, there's always next year.
Act 4 Shameless plug.
I'd like to retire. I'd like to retire and just run my mouth to a bunch of nameless, faceless people on the internet. But how? How, dear listener, can I do this? I need your help. If you like the show, casually, nonchalantly, and with indifference, tell 25 to 30 people about it. No, not 24, 25 to 30 people. If you don't like the show, be sure to tell at least 100 people. I don't need to tell you how to do your business, but the internets are full of people condemning, damning, chastising people, places, things, events. Feel free to throw me in with that lot. In sum, dear listener, take your valuable time out of your valuable day and spend it promoting my podcast. Write reviews. Plug it online. Take to the streets and preach to the people. This is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast.